Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm your host, Jeffrey, and subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Now, the Stanford Cardinal on Saturday are traveling to South Bend, Indiana to take on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Who do I think is going to win this game? Let's break it down. Now, Stanford is 1-4 to start this season, and David Shaw, again, one of the most respected head coaches in college football, has had a rough go of it in the last few years for Stanford. They have been struggling and have not been playing good football. But they started their season off with a win over Colgate, 41-10, but it's been downhill since then. They lost to USC 41-28. And this was a game that they were not as competitive as the score would indicate. They did play well in this game, but they weren't super close, but they scored a couple times toward the end to make it look better than the score would indicate, as I said. Then they lost at Washington 40-22. And again, same thing. The final score was a lot closer than this game actually was, and Stanford is just really struggling on both sides of the ball on offense and defense this season. Then they lost at Oregon 45-27. This was just a brutal three-game stretch in general. All three of these teams are one of the better teams in the Pac-12, and Stanford had to play them back-to-back-to-back, and again, they could not get the win. But then they lost to Oregon State in a heartbreaker, 28-27. Stanford was winning this game the whole time, and they gave up a score at the end. Stanford probably should have won this game, but they fell to Oregon State. So in that game against Oregon State, quarterback Tanner McKee had 269 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Tanner McKee is a guy that a lot of people think has NFL potential, and he does because he has big size. He's 6'6", but his scrambling ability is not there. He can't run, and that is what's hurting Stanford because Stanford's offensive line is not as good as it used to be back when they were churning out NFL linemen on the offense every single season, and now they're struggling at offensive line, and that is what is hurting Tanner McKee because he cannot run. And Tanner McKee's a good thrower, but if he has time, he can get the ball out, but when he doesn't have time, it's game over. Running back Casey Filkins is 62 yards and a touchdown. He's a good running back. But as I've said, Stanford's offensive line is not as good as it used to be, and the run game is suffering because of it. Wide receiver Bryson Tremaine, 82 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's a really tall wide receiver. He's a really good deep threat for Tanner McKee. Wide receiver Elijah Higgins at 68 yards, and tight end Benjamin Urasek at 58 yards. So Stanford does have a good receiving core, but again, he has to have time, Tanner McKee, to throw the ball to get it to them. And on the defensive side of the ball, safety Kendall Williamson had 5 tackles, and linebacker Ricky Meason had 4 tackles. But Stanford's defense as a whole has been struggling this season. Now on the Notre Dame side, Notre Dame is 3-2 to start the season, and Marcus Freeman's first year as head coach. And it started out rough for Notre Dame with a 21-10 loss at Ohio State, in a game that they tried, but Ohio State is just fantastic, and Notre Dame at least hung with them overall. It was a week 1 game, too. They lost to Marshall 26-21 in a game where everybody was on panic alert. Notre Dame fans were frustrated because you should not be losing to Marshall if you're Notre Dame, especially at home. But then they've turned it around, and they've won 3 straight. They beat California 24-17. Wasn't an impressive win, but they got the win. That's all that mattered. But then they beat UNC on the road, 45-32. And North Carolina's offense is fantastic, but Notre Dame scored more than North Carolina. Obviously, North Carolina's defense is not very good, but Notre Dame played well in this game. And then they beat BYU on a neutral in Las Vegas, 28-20. And again, you can just see that Notre Dame is improving week by week. And in that BYU game, quarterback Drew Pine at 262 yards, 3 touchdowns, and interception. Again, he's filling in for Tyler Buckner, who's out for the season. But Drew Pine is getting better every single game that he is playing in. He is improving, and you can tell that his confidence is growing. Running back Audric Esteem at 97 yards and 13 receiving yards. Running back Logan Diggs at 93 yards, and running back Chris Tyree at 42 yards. Again, Notre Dame has got a trio of great running backs. And that is always great to have, especially if one of them gets hurt and then you have the 2 other ones. But again, all of them are electric and all of them do different things for Notre Dame. They are very, very, very good in the running back room. Tight end Michael Mayer at 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. Michael Mayer is one of the best tight ends in America, and he is going to be an NFL tight end. He is a fantastic player. Wide receiver Jaden Thomas at 74 yards and a touchdown. The difference between Notre Dame at the beginning of the season and now is that Notre Dame's offense has improved. They are now getting the ball to Michael Mayer more than they were at the beginning of the season. I remember one game he had like 10 yards, and I said they needed to get the ball to him more, and as you can see, they are. He had 118 yards. So again, that is great news for Notre Dame. Safety Brandon Joseph, the Northwestern, transferred 4 tackles, a linebacker J.D. Bertrand had 2 tackles against BYU. So Notre Dame's defense has played well this season outside the North Carolina game where they gave up 32, but again, North Carolina's offense is really good. Notre Dame's defense has played really, really well. So who do I think is going to win this game? Now, Stanford has to travel on the road and play at Notre Dame, and that's red flag number 1 because it is very tough to win at Notre Dame, even though Notre Dame lost to Marshall at home. But Notre Dame is a better football team now than they were at the beginning of the season, and they are only getting better. Stanford is not getting any better. They are trying, but they've gone through a 3-game gauntlet in the Pac-12 where they couldn't win, and then they lost a heartbreaker to Oregon State. I don't think Stanford is going to be able to travel across the country and win at Notre Dame. I got Notre Dame winning 31-17 over Stanford. I think Stanford can try to keep it close, but I don't think they're going to have a good chance to win. They can win. Any team can win on any given Saturday, but I think Notre Dame is rapidly improving. Drew Pine is gaining confidence at quarterback. They've got a better defense than Stanford, and Stanford's offense is not going to be able to protect Tanner McKee enough for them to win. I think Notre Dame's defense is going to stop Stanford enough, and I got Notre Dame winning this game 31-17 over Stanford. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below whether you think Notre Dame or Stanford is going to win this game and why, and I will see you next time.